All right, y'all. For this episode, for anyone who is watching, I'm by myself. No one's here, right? Probably gonna see a lot more of these lately, like a lot more. Ideally, if I stick to a consistent posting cadence, right? Reason for that is, all right. So I've kind of had a little bit of an internal battle slash struggle. Your boy is like out here just fucking, 2024, new year, new me, whatever the fuck. I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. I don't think they're the best thing in terms of like productivity, just because you're putting an expiration date. I was kind of talking about that with Michael, who was on like 2 episodes ago or the last episode. And I do not believe in them for that reason, right? But going into this new year, for whatever reason, I felt like this year was going to be like a good year from like a productivity standpoint. I'll talk a little bit about that later as to why exactly I believe that, or what exactly I'm feeling about 2024, how exactly it's going so far, projections and shit like that. But overall, right, the reason I was saying that you're going to see a lot of these is because I've been thinking like the whole point of a podcast is to have interesting conversation, or at least for me, the reason I started this was because I had conversations with people, friends, family, loved ones, whatever it may be. And I would always think to myself after those conversations, holy shit, that was such an amazing like chat. I wish I had a recording of that so I could go back and reference it, for life lessons, just to have as like a really beautiful memory. Many reasons, right? There's a multitude of reasons. There's not any singular reason as to why I started the podcast. But that being said, I've been doing this on and off. I will say, I'm not going to say I've been doing it consistently since I think 2019, something like that, maybe 2020. I don't know if this was like a COVID thing. I don't think it was a COVID thing. This was born before that. So 2019. So it's been about 4 years, but I really say I've been doing it consistently for like the past, putting more effort into it and stuff like that for the past year or so. In that time, I have seldom done a solo podcast. I really don't enjoy doing them just because I feel like it's weird. It's like I'm lecturing a camera. And if you ask Hannah, I fucking lecture a lot. And that should come like second nature to me. But in like, as far as a podcast goes, like for an episode, this does not make for the most entertaining stuff to watch just because, there's not conversation that's happening. It's just me talking to a camera, and it's kind of like me thinking out loud. And the reason I didn't really enjoy doing those is because it's just not natural. There isn't like funny moments, right? Because conversation, ebb and flows of conversation, they usually lead to like funny moments, clippable moments, stuff like that. That's just like that's what makes podcasting fun for me, right? Like when I have my friends on and we're over here just fucking around, dicking around, talking about whatever with whoever, those tend to be the podcasts that I'm always going back to and being like, that was a good episode. I do that. I literally do go back and watch old episodes because I'm like, yo, that episode was mad funny. One that pops into mind really, really easily is when Mike came over. This was like, oh my God, I want to say almost 2 years ago. I think it was in December. We recorded a podcast that was like my first and only gameplay episode. That was a bitch to edit. The whole episode was gameplay focused, right? I think there was one with Paul too, where we had done like a FIFA. Excuse the cop sirens in the background. I live in Brooklyn, so there's always shit popping off. Actually, you know what? Before I continue with what I was just saying, a quick side note. I downloaded the Citizens app, and this is not an app that I would recommend to those who have general anxiety, right? I would say I'm an anxious person, but also I don't get really discouraged by like the realities of living in like a big city. Like Hannah's she's a little bit more scared of, I would say, the amount of people that's in New York City and like the amount of shit that's constantly happening, like bad things, like crimes, stuff like that, accidents, just overall, she tends to be more sensitive towards that stuff. My Instagram feed has desensitized me to the point where like I could see someone just get shot and I'll just be like, not, I mean, obviously not in real life, like hear about it or see it and I'm just like, oh damn, that sucks. But like, it's another day here on planet Earth. People are fucking dying all the time. Like, this is what Instagram, my algorithm, has done to me. I see on my feed, it's wild. It's like 20% fucking animal videos, cute stuff, and then the rest of the 80% is just the most morbid shit you could ever imagine. I don't know why that is. I think I sent one once, and then Instagram was like, oh, you like that? Bet, I got you. I'm going to serve this up for you every single day going forward. So yeah, that's a quick side note. So Citizens app, that definitely don't recommend that for anybody who's like remotely anxious about living in a major metropolitan area, mostly because like I get alerts on my phone for the craziest shit. I'm sleeping in bed the other night and I woke up to like, doesn't help that the fucking designers of this app make it so that it's like jarring. I woke up to like a crazy notification noise, like didn't sound like a phone ring, didn't sound like a normal Instagram, like whatever, update, ping, whatever. It was like a zoom, zoom, like that. Like I that's the best I could impersonate it. And I fucking wake up because I'm a light sleeper. I check my phone thinking some shit's going off, and it's of course the Citizens app saying like, oh, man shot in the chest, 2 point something miles away. I'm like, oh, okay, that's nice. I'm gonna go fucking back to sleep now because it's not that close where I should be concerned. So yeah, side tangent. Back to what I was saying before. So I do go back and I watch those episodes, right? And I do enjoy, that's the reason I started doing the podcast. I really enjoy making like memories, so to speak, that I could go back and watch. It's just like a really wholesome thing for me. Like Mike's birthday gift when I gave him, I think it was like a Skyrim dagger. Yeah, it was a Skyrim dagger for, I can't remember what birthday of his. I want to say 23rd or some shit like that. That was on camera. That was on this podcast that I did that. So even if this podcast never pops off, never blows up, whatever it may be, going back and just having that like kind of in the banks of my like memory, just I bank that, like it's stored away that I could just pull that out and, like reference that, see that clip or, watch that video. I like the fact that this is like a personal archive for like my loved ones and my conversations with these awesome people. That being said, right, reason that you're going to see a lot more of these episodes is that this is my passion project. I love this. I love making, videos. I like creating. I like making or coming up with different ideas on how to make the podcast a little bit more interesting. You saw that with the episode with Chef Sarah. We shot a cooking segment that didn't go as smooth as I'd hoped to. We lost like half the fucking footage in the goddamn episode when we were making it live. Part of the major appeal of that cooking recipe was the fact that she had bought Wagyu beef, ground Wagyu beef for a ragu sauce that she was making for that homemade kind of like, I want to call it Asian / Italian fusion, but if you ask her, it was just like it was her take on a New York Times, I think, ragu recipe. She had incorporated ingredients in there that like wasn't listed in the actual step-by-step recipe, but that's because she's a chef, right? Like she has that intuition on how to modify it to like her palate's preferences and stuff like that. So that was a really cool thing, but we missed out on all the footage of the making of the actual meat sauce, which is like the coolest part. I mean, in my opinion, like dicing up the onions, seasoning the meat, mixing it all together, watching that just fucking like she deglazed the bottom of the pan with this like wine. It was very, very elaborate in terms of, at least for me, right? From my perspective, because I'm a shit cook. It was an elaborate recipe. It was an elaborate process to actually make that dish. And we missed like 50% of the footage, raw footage was missing because the file format wasn't the same file format as the rest of the footage that you saw on the actual episode, the final version that was uploaded. And reason for that is because my cameraman, it's not his fault. Like there was some iPhone setting. He recently got the new iPhone that like we weren't aware of, so it just fucked it up. And then when I tried to actually use the footage, it was really blurry. It was just a mess. So that's kind of like growing pains of trying to get this shit kind of like going through this, right? And I hesitate. The internal battle that I had referenced before, as far as it relates to this passion project of mine, is I would always kind of struggle, right? Because I want to have conversations with people that I find interesting. And I want to talk about a variety of topics, whatever, with whoever. That's kind of like the point of the podcast. There's not really a point to the podcast. I enjoy kind of operating in that gray zone, I like having not a clear definition or a point to this podcast, because then it allows me the flexibility to just talk about, whatever. And I realize that I cannot go out and reach out to these people, right? who have interesting stories and stuff like that, and tell them to come on, like as a stranger, tell them to come on to my podcast when I don't have a following. But how do you build a following? Like, how do you get the ball rolling, get momentum on social media and stuff like that? It's by content, right? So the internal battle that I would always have, right, inside my own head when it comes to this fucking podcast is, how do I get my podcast to be like enticing for someone to come onto it? Like, how do I get it so that they want to come onto the podcast? But I can't get, like, I need followers. And before I can get there, I need to put out stuff in order to get those followers. So it's like it's just like a cyclical problem, I guess you could call it. And it's not, the point of this is not to say like, I want to do this so that I make money from this. That was never my intention from this. Cause like, everybody wants to be a fucking influencer nowadays. I honestly, like, I don't really, that whole life, like going to fucking LA and being one of these TikTokers and shit like that, that doesn't interest me at all. I like just having genuine conversations and experiences with people, getting to know people. That is the shit that really motivates this. That's kind of like my new, I guess, vision for this thing going forward, right? Now, excuse the laundry machine in the background, bro. I don't even know if that's coming up, but on the audio. But this is, again, growing pains. We're in a tiny ass apartment here, a booger sized apartment in New York City. So you're just gonna have to deal with, the laundry running in the background and fucking air filters and stuff like that. Just all different types of sounds. So definitely not clean audio. Point is, right? So back to what I was trying to say. I want to do solo episodes because I realized I need to kind of go through, like, who am I kidding, right? I'm not going to be putting out fucking grade A, prime cut, whatever you want to call it, episodes that are always going to be bangers and stuff like that. This is like part of the process is putting out, I guess, shit content. I don't want to say shit content, but like, I got to practice. And without putting in reps, I'm never going to get better. I'm never going to, really hone in on being able to, consistently upload and stuff like that. So I realized, right, I can't depend on guests and stuff like that. I just need to come on here and got to talk about some shit sometimes just by myself with you, the audience, whatever. I think we have over 100 subscribers now, which is great. I'm grateful for, most of that being my family and friends, but I'm grateful for every single one of y'all. The, I think average 40 viewers, whatever it is. I really appreciate you guys, whoever's watching this. If you took the time out of your day to watch this little crappy podcast, I really appreciate that support. So point is, this whole long-winded intro is saying you're going to get used to kind of just it being me. And it being me for this episode, the theme of this episode is it's going to be a little bit of a vulnerable one. We're going to be talking about my experience living by myself, or not by myself, but not, leaving the nest, so to speak. It's been about a year now. I moved out in December of 2022. So right now it's February of 2024, so it's just a little bit over a year because I moved out in mid-December. And there's definitely been a lot of shit that I've learned in that time, like a lot. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about 2024, and I want to talk about some recent, not hardships, I don't want to call it hardships, but like I guess mental revelation that I went through recently. So that being said, let's just start with the main meat and potatoes of today's episode, or this week's episode, and it's going to be living by myself or on my own, leaving the nest for the past year. I think this is a really interesting topic, right? I don't really have a frame of reference in my personal life to kind of go off of, right? Meaning my friends and family, right? A lot of my friends and family, obviously I can't even compare myself to previous generations. We all know that our parents, the times that they grew up in is much different from the times that we grow up in. And when they were 25, when they moved out, whatever it is, they have all their own, they had their own circumstances in their lives that they went through and stuff like that to actually get out of the house. And I found myself in a situation where, like, in my friend group, I was the first one to kind of like leave the nest, so to speak. And nothing against that. Actually, I think that's a super smart move in retrospect, because just from a financial standpoint, living on your own is hard, y'all. I know that is an obvious statement, but it cannot be understated how hard it is financially to live on your own. If you are fortunate enough to live in a household with, parents that, take care of you and stuff like that, just give them a fucking hug, you know? Tell them that you appreciate them, because that shit goes a long way. I'm over here. So one of the biggest life lessons that I learned after I moved out, right? My parents, God bless their fucking hearts, when I told them that I was moving out, they met that with a lot of criticism, as is the nature of parents, right? That any big change that their child undergoes, or any big life step that their child takes, they're always gonna fucking meet it with criticism or hesitancy, because they don't want their child to be put in like a vulnerable or potentially harmful situation. And they know the state of the world. They know the state of the economy. They know the fact that we live, right? Obviously, I said before, I live in Brooklyn. They know financially New York City is a very difficult place to kind of live and, be able to live like a good life, like a life where you could actually do shit and you're not just eating like fucking, Tyson dinosaur chicken nuggets and like canned baked beans every day for meals, because of the fact that shit's so tight. Like, you got to fucking, clutch onto your purse and count your pennies and shit like that. So because they knew all that, when I told them that I had this idea that I wanted to move out and move in with my girlfriend, Hannah, which at the time I think we were just around 2 years, right? Dating for 2 years. They obviously were like, where are you going to get the money to move in? How are you going to move in? Like, what furniture do you have? Like all this shit. They're asking me all these questions because they've been through this stuff before. And of course, like me being me, I kind of just, I don't want to say rush into things, but like if an opportunity presents itself and I'm convinced that this is the right path to take and I don't regret moving out, I just kind of go for it, right? And I figure out the shit as we go, because there's never going to be, you could plan all you fucking want, but the more you plan, the more time you put into planning, there's always going to be something that is unforeseen that comes across your path. And you're going to be like, well, fuck, all that planning and all that time that I spent thinking about this, I didn't think of that, So there's never going to be a perfect plan. I decided it would be a good idea to move out, which it was. And, again, I don't regret it, but I moved out. And my parents, even though they were very hesitant and they were telling me that they didn't think it was a good idea, once I had already like made the decision and I told them, guys, I kind of like, for the lack of better words, like, I don't care. I am moving out no matter what, like regardless. They kind of just, they accepted it. And, this was really mature of them. They looked at me as an adult at that point. Their perspective shifted. They didn't see me as like their kid. They were like, okay, he's his own man. He's made a fucking decision. He's going to go through with it. Let's just be supportive. So at that point, my parents, they were like, let's go and let's see what old furniture you can take, so that way you don't have to spend as much money going and buying like thousands of dollars worth of furniture for this tiny ass apartment. Try to just use hand-me-down so you save money there. They helped me get the U-Haul truck. They helped me load the U-Haul truck. Then my dad and I, at like 5 o'clock in the morning, woke up, got in the U-Haul truck, and then drove from upstate New York down into Brooklyn the long way, because from where we live to get to Brooklyn, the quickest way is on a parkway, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with fucking interstate laws and parkway laws, whatever, road regulations. You can't drive commercial vehicles on parkways. So we had to take the long way around. So that was like an hour and a half drive. And it was actually pretty sick because like, this is like a core memory for me, actually. And I think like as we get older, right, as people get older, it becomes very difficult to make core memories. And this one for me is definitely one that it was a core memory that was formed. Usually my dad's the type of person where he's like a micromanager. He's the type of person where he wants to be like in control of the situation, especially when it comes to his kids, his loved ones, even our fucking dog. Like he's a very helicopter style parent. And when the U-Haul was packed, my mom did her fucking Tetris master shit, and she was like flipping chairs upside down, putting stuff like underneath tables, like using every little space inside the fucking 10-foot box truck that we rented efficiently. And this thing was packed to the brim. Like when we pulled down that closing door, that sliding door, it was literally like, I want to say, no joke, like 1.5 inches, 2 inches of clearance between all the stuff that was in the fucking truck to the back of the, like, the door. So the truck's packed. We get in and I'm thinking like, oh, my dad's probably going to say like he'll drive and whatever. I wanted to drive, but I thought he was going to fight me on that. He was like, this is the core memory. He said, no, go ahead. So I'm in the car. Now it's 5 o'clock in the morning. The sun is fucking, It's dark because it's winter. It's the dead of winter. The sun is not even in the sky yet. We hit the road. It's fucking pitch black. It's like that calm, almost eerie, quiet calmness, like stillness to the air in like the wee hours of the morning, right? Before like even the fucking birds get up. And we're driving and I'm in this giant lifted ass truck and I'm just like, holy shit, like it's happening. Like I'm moving out. Like I'm in the fucking car with my dad, the guy who's raised me my whole life. And this is the process. Like I'm going to Brooklyn and he's about to just, be like, okay, bye son. Like, I gave you the tools. Me and my wife, my mom gave you the tools for life that we think you needed. To the best of our abilities, parented you as best we could. Now it's time for you to, take off. And I'm thinking about all this shit while I'm driving, and it's just fucking crazy. He's sitting to the right of me. We're just talking, like chit-chatting, like almost like I thought he was going to give me a life lesson. I thought he was going to try to like prepare me for give me some big speech to prepare me for like the true trials and tribulations of life, whatever. He didn't do any of that shit. We were just chopping it up like casual conversation. And I'm like, whoa, like I took a deep breath as I'm driving and I sunk it all in. We get there around like 2 hours later, 7:00 in the morning. We pull up behind the building. And this man, this is where I was like, Jesus fucking Christ. I was 24 at the time when we moved out. When I moved out. 24, about 6 foot, like 6'3.5", whatever. Relatively, I would say strong and capable person, right? And all the shit that's in the box truck, it's heavy. Like, it's not light stuff, right? And it obviously, for anyone who's moved any furniture, that shit's hard. Like, because it's not weights, dumbbells, where it's like a compact thing that you could just pick up really easily. It's awkward weight distribution. You got to, a lot of the times you're trying to pick stuff up and you might not pick it up realizing that, oh, fuck, like the heaviest part of this is farthest away from me. So when I pick it up, it's like a lot of my lower back and shit like that. I was dying, okay? By the fucking 45-minute mark of moving all this shit into taking it out of the truck, putting it onto a trolley, pushing the trolley into the building, pushing it into the elevator, going up the elevator to our floor, going through these narrow ass hallways, taking a sharp ass right turn into the tiny ass booger sized apartment, and then dropping all this stuff off to just rinse and repeat that cycle for like fucking ever. It seemed forever, right? I'm dying by 45 minutes in. My dad at the time was 51, I think. I want to say 51. He's always taking care of his health. He works out. He's pretty big dude, right? Especially I feel like for a Chinese guy, not to say like Chinese dudes are small, but I feel like the stereotype is that, Asian guys are a little bit more lanky and like wiry builds than like, big bulkier builds. My dad's a bulkier guy. He's very strong, like stronger than me. So I'm just sitting there and now I'm looking at him like not my dad, right? Because when you're a kid and you're looking at your dad, obviously he's your superhero. Then you grow up, your dad becomes a little bit more human. And then like in your teenage years, you want to rebel against this image of a man that your dad gives you for whatever reason. That's just like the natural instinct that like teenagers have, right? Whether you know it or not, that's just kind of what goes on. So I'm looking at my dad and then I'm realizing like now I'm looking at him not as my dad. I'm just like, holy shit. Yo, like this guy, like I'm fucking dying right now. And this guy's double my age, close to double my age. No, over double my age. And I'm like, he's manhandling this shit right now. Like he was breaking a sweat, but he wasn't bitching. He was just like, you know what? Like we're here. I'm moving you in. I'm gonna help you out. Let's just get this shit done. And because of him, like telling me to just kind of suck it up, just keep fucking going. I'm over here trying to be like, oh, can we please take breaks, whatever. He's like, no, let's just keep going because the longer we take with this, people are gonna wake up because keep in mind it's the morning. I think it was on a Sunday. People are gonna be up using the elevators. It's gonna take us even longer. So he's like, let's just get this over with quick. So he's just grinding, pushing through it. We moved all of the shit that was in that truck, I want to say in under 2 hours, which is fucking crazy considering the amount of time it takes to go up and down the elevators, yada, yada, all that stuff that I said before. So at this point, I'm like, okay, like newfound respect, newfound admiration, really like another core memory, right? Like just the whole process of driving, all that stuff, getting there, moving all that stuff. And it's just me and my dad, like my mom and my girlfriend, because we had also moved in, obviously, Hannah's stuff too. They didn't come along to help us move because it's like, well, the elevators and the hallways and everything, they're so small. So you guys don't even bother coming, right? Because why are we going to make you guys lift all this heavy shit? We'll do that. And then you guys just come around like, I want to say fourth quarter, close to the end of it, so that once you guys are in the apartment, you could start kind of like organizing the shit while we still finish up bringing all the stuff. And that's exactly what we did. And it was just a long, drawn out process that was kind of difficult, but it was a core memory, right? After that, then I think from that day on, I just kept kind of reflecting on like life and how insane it is, how once you're out of your parents' house and you're on your own, you really get a sense of like, okay, like this is real. Like I'm on my own now. Like some shit goes wrong. I don't have dad and mom to run to be like, hey, how do I take care of this? Obviously you could call them, FaceTime them, whatever. But I'm saying like, if something happens, something breaks in the house, you don't have someone immediately to turn to just be like, how do I handle this? You got that shit on your own. And I'm thinking about all this stuff, and I was 24 at the time. Now I'm 25. And I'm just like, how did my dad navigate this? Right? My dad had me when I was 28. I'm 27, something like that. I'm 25 now. So I'm thinking 2 years, I mean, in your 20s, 2 years there's a lot of growth that happens in your 20s. So it's not like, the amount of growth that happens in like your 20s is the same as, your 30s, meaning 2 years in your 20s, a lot more shit is going to develop than 2 years in your 30s, right? So I'm thinking like, how the fuck him at 27 had a full-blown child, right? With his wife making the income he was making at the time. Like you have so many just question marks, like so many unknowns, so many things in life that you don't know how you're going to handle, or you just get anxious about it. So I had so many sleepless nights, like when I first moved in, like thinking about where do I go from here? Like now that I'm moved out, because I was so fixated for the longest time on I gotta move out, right? There reached a point like I had never lived on my own before. I never even went away for college. I commuted to college. And I think that was like played a huge part in that, in this sentiment that I felt like I needed to move out. It was just kind of like, it just felt like I was choking, like I was drowning, like I was always being near my parents. I didn't have any sense of like true independence where like if I wanted to do something, I could do it without having to go to them, asking them for their permission, or, if I wanted to have friends over, just being respectful of them, being like, not that they would ever have a problem with it, but just being respectful and courteous and just being like, hey guys, do you guys mind if so-and-so comes over? We might be up late, drinking whatever, doing whatever, partying. I felt such a craving, like such a hunger for just being on my own and having my own space and not having to answer to anyone, that I just was so fixated on, I need to move out, I need to move out, I need to move out. And then once it happened, in that first month, 2 months of me being out in this apartment that now I'm recording this in, there was just like a overwhelming sense of like just not knowing and anxiety that came along with that. It was really strange. Like I would just be up at night just thinking like, now that I'm moved out, like what the fuck do I do now? Like, okay, that goal has been achieved. What's the next step? I didn't know. Like there's no next step. Before that point, everything in life is kind of, for me, was like laid out for me, right? You grow up, your parents tell you do this sport, so you do that sport. And then that sport has a clear, itinerary, a clear schedule. You go to practice, you have games on this day, whatever. Go to school, you wake up at 7 a.m., mom makes you breakfast, go to school, have your periods, whatever, high school, come back at 2:30, 3 o'clock, whatever it is. Do your homework, then maybe hang out with friends, play video games, jerk off, whatever the fuck, then go to sleep, rinse and repeat. Go to college, same shit. A little bit more freedom, but same thing, like still outlined for you, right? Then after college, you go get a job. Then after you get a job, you move out, right? And then once you move out, now I'm at that point. I moved out. What the fuck do I do now? So that, the biggest takeaway, the biggest lesson, I guess, is just really, honestly, it's just appreciating my parents for all that they did for me, but also admiring them for being able to figure out and navigate like those unknown aspects of life with, I think, grace. I think they did it well. And I really just admire them for that, because now I, as an adult, can look at them with admiration. And it's like weird. As you grow up, your parents become more human, but in them becoming more human, right? And not like these like deities who are always right in everything that they say, or they always know, what the best thing is for you. As you grow up and you get older, your life becomes more complicated, and they can't necessarily know what the best thing is for you because they grew up in a different time, in a different era. So their life experience may not apply to me and what I'm going through. But in realizing that, and kind of realizing that, oh, like they're humans just like me, you kind of, your admiration for them grows, because it's like you're just as, I don't want to say weak, but like just as, a noob or a novice at life as I was or am now. You were as I am now, and you figured it out. So that made me appreciate them so much more, like so much more. And now I'm able to have these like really honest conversations with them. And it's weird, like moving out. I mean, obviously it changes from person to person. I'm just speaking from my own perspective, my own personal experience. My relationship with my parents got so much better after I moved out, especially with my dad. Because I said my dad, he's the helicopter parent type, right? He loves to fucking be on top and know all the details and be like, tell me like, when you get there, tell me when you do this, tell me when you do X, tell me when you do Y, tell me when you do Z. So that kind of suffocation had created like a rift between us because I was just sick of it, right? Once I moved out and he kind of stepped back, he completely removed himself from that situation, meaning like he no longer would be like on top of my ass checking on me 24/7. When that happened, then I kind of was able to like relax, and I was like, oh my God. And now every time I see my parents, it's like a good time always. We're catching up. It's like not catching up, but we're talking about having honest conversations. And if they ask me how my day went, I don't just say good and then move on, Before, if I get home from school, or if I got home from college, or after college when I graduated and I was still living with them, I get home from work. They're like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, oh, good, whatever. And it's such a limited conversation, right? And I would imagine as like a parent, that's hard to go through, because like here's this person that like, they're you on a basic level, they are you, right? They're your fucking kin. They're your family. And here's this kid that you fucking have sacrificed so much for, and you just want to have a conversation with them, and that little booger turns to you, that little snot head turns to you and just says like good, gives you one word answer, and just, shrugs you off like nothing. Treats you like a little fucking fly or whatever, little piece of dirt, and just like keep it moving, and you kind of ignore them. I would imagine that was hard for like my parents to go through with me. I'm not saying I was like a evil kid. I'm not saying I don't even think I was a bad kid. I just think I'm recognizing the fact that me being like that, having that mood, just assuming that they were trying to control, oh, you're asking me, oh, why do you need to know? Like, oh, whatever, and pushing them away. I would imagine that whole era of our relationship was kind of difficult to go through. So result is, after 1 year of, living on my own, it's just like, appreciate your fucking parents and everything they do for you. It's crazy how much they sacrifice. It's crazy how much, and then how, like, I realize like how much they sacrifice and how well they did at providing for us. Because now that I'm living on my own, I'm in charge of grocery shopping. I'm in charge of, fucking going out and buying some household supplies, right? And this is another thing too. You go and you live in your house the way I grew up in the fucking suburbs. I'm not saying we're fucking rich, right? But we weren't like, I was fortunate enough to grow in I would say I'm privileged. I grew up in a household that, was a comfortable middle-class household, right? In upstate New York, whatever. And I just took for granted the littlest of things, like fucking toilet paper and paper towels. And I always used to, like, growing up, like, I would fucking wash my hands, rip a paper towel, dry my hands, throw it out. And my mom has this habit, right? My mom, she comes from Colombia, which is a third world country. She grew up in a small ass town for the majority of her life. She was poor. So then when she had, I guess, made it with my dad, got to a comfortable financial state where there was like a larger sense of security, those, I guess, like deeply ingrained habits that she had when she was, poor, that never left. And I always used to laugh. Like, I would wash my hands, dry my hands with a paper towel, throw it out, and she'd be like, no. She'd see me wash my hands and dry my hands. She'd be like, no, don't throw that paper towel out. She would take a fucking Bounty paper towel, And she had a designated space on the countertop right next to the left of the sink where she would lay out sheets of the paper towel that we had just used just for water to let them air dry to then reuse them. Okay? I know what that probably sounds ridiculous, but it's like little things like that I remember that I'm like, oh my fucking God. Now I get why she did that, because that shit's expensive. And it's not like you're wiping your ass and there's fucking, doo-doo smears on the goddamn paper towel. It's just water. And you just wash your hands, so your hands are clean. She's thinking in her head, right, the way she grew up, that's a resource. Don't waste it. Save it. You could use that to clean like a fucking, whatever. Use it with Windex to clean the mirrors, whatever it is, right? So just little things like that you take for granted. Because then now that I'm living on my own, I'm like, my household fridge, the fridge that when I am accustomed to opening, right? The way I grew up, there's a variety of foods in that fridge. Like when I think of my fridge in my mind's eye, I open the doors, there's milk, there's eggs, we didn't keep bread in the fridge, but there's obviously bread, maybe some cold cuts, some Polly-O string cheese, the classics, like snacks that are readily available to consume, and also like fresh produce, like vegetables. Obviously important to have. You need those fucking micronutrients, whatever, vitamins and minerals. I'm not a fucking doctor. I don't know that much about health, but you get what I'm saying. A balanced diet. All that is at your disposal. My fridge now looks like it's not a bachelor's fridge, but it's so limited. Like, it's not just condiments and sauces and shit. It's like we have I don't even have milk in my fridge. All I have is like eggs. I got like some wee yogurts. Greek yogurt is a must. Like, I love Greek yogurt. So I always got Greek yogurt on hand. And then it's just the freezer is full of like frozen meats. There's nothing else. Like even I would even go as far as saying I appreciated the seasonings that we had. My mom would always have like, fucking cumin or like paprika or fucking like all these Goya or whatever it is, packets of sazon just like in the house, in the cabinet, ready to use to cook homemade food, right? Here, I ain't got none of that shit. I got some seasonings. I got the basic salt, pepper, garlic, whatever. But like the really elaborate stuff, the stuff that's like thyme and oregano, I don't have that because it's like, well, I don't know how to cook. So what the fuck am I going to use that for? Not only that, when I went to go buy those seasonings, granted, everything in the city is marked up to like in my opinion, a ridiculous amount, like unlivable almost. It's fucking crazy. But I show up to the Wegmans or the the ShopRite or whatever, the grocery store that's near me. And I'm looking at this shit and I'm like, ain't no way they're charging $12 for a little glass ass jar of fucking garlic. There's no shot. Then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I just spent $200 on like a casual grocery store run. How the fuck did my parents sustain this with my obese ass? Because when I was younger, I would say I ate more when I was younger than I do now. How the fuck did they do this with my fat ass running around and my sister and my dad and my mom? How did they do all that? So that's just another level of appreciation, right? So that's really, I would say, like the biggest takeaway after living for a year. Now, like how 2024 has treated me so far. Let me take a sip of water real quick because my ass is parched. 2024. I'm not like a big I like New Year's in terms of like celebrations, but I'm not one of these dudes that are like, oh my God, New Year, new me. Like I don't like any of that. Like it's not that I have anything against it, but it's just kind of like I see it's pointless to me to go and claim you're going to make these big changes and then do it for like a month and then let it drop off, right? That's why I kind of get annoyed with like the whole January phase of gyms being super fucking packed, and then like by February, all of those fucking people are gone. Like I think that's ridiculous. Why do you got to wait till January to do that, to make that life change? Because then you're putting a pressure of it being on New Year's, and you're just bound to fail. That's why I don't like New Year's resolutions. But 2024, going into it, for some reason, I think it's because I was living on my own and me having this like refreshed perspective on life, it kind of like motivated me a little bit. I went into this year thinking like, okay, I have something like there's something like bubbling for, I don't know what it is. I just feel like this year is going to be a good year. Like I'm going to learn a lot, right? It's an opportunity. This year I'm going to grow a lot as a person. That's really the main thing, right? that I had the feeling of going into it. And I think all of that was a result of, I want to say, a quarter life crisis that I went through in September. So I turned 25 in September, and I'm also not one of these people that care about age, right? Like, to me, age is just a number. Like, it really is, right? Like, I feel internally, mentally, like, I would say for the most part, I still feel like a fucking 19-year-old or whatever it is. Like, I still laugh at farts. I still have like an immature sense of humor. I still like video games and all this shit. Like, in that regard, I still feel like a fucking kid. But yet at the same time, I'm paying taxes, like just like adult stuff, right? Like, so at the same time, it's almost like these two perspectives, like these two halves of myself. And then the quarter life crisis, when I turned 25, I'd realized like, oh shit, I am closer to 30 than the age that I feel like I am in my head. That's kind of like jarring. When I realized that, I was like, I can't dick around anymore. And I'm not going to lie, Hannah was a really big, I'll say like she was like a big catalyst to this. There was a point like we were having a conversation, whatever it is, just talking about life. And she just kind of called me out on some bullshit. I don't want to talk about exactly what had happened, because obviously it's personal, but the result of it, right, which is the only thing that matters, is that I kind of looked at myself in the mirror and was like, shit, you got some stuff to work on. And the thing, right, that I kind of had realized is that my whole life, and I kind of alluded to this before, shit was just laid out for me. School was pretty easy. Like, I don't think I'm a genius, but I don't think I'm a dumbass either. Like, I didn't really study for any tests in college or high school and even college. Like, education, standardized tests, those came like pretty easy to me. Like, it felt pretty natural. It didn't feel like I needed to put in a lot of effort into those things to be successful, quote unquote, successful at them. So obviously, if that's the case, and my dad is like pushing me, whatever, go to college, do all that stuff is set up. So like the point that I am in life now, where I have the job that I have, all this stuff, like that was supposed to happen. That's where I'm supposed to be, because of the shit that my parents provided for me, and because of like just, I guess, the way I am. So that is to say, like, there's nothing to be proud of. Then I look back and I'm like, oh my God, like I'm looking at my whole life at this point when I was 25, after me and Hannah had that conversation. And I'm just thinking about everything I've accomplished, all of the things that I've done up until this point. And I'm like, what can I say I'm truly proud of? And there was like a deafening silence. And I'm like thinking in my head, like, I'm just going through everything. I'm like, wow, there isn't a single thing that I could say like, oh, I'm very proud of this. Not a single fucking thing. Literally not a single thing. That was hard to realize that. That was it was just like disappointing. Because then I realized like, oh shit, like you're on the path to just being like a loser. Like, you want all these things in life, right? And my definition of like a loser is not, I don't know what the typical definition is, right? But loser sounds pretty harsh. But what I mean by loser is, in my opinion, a loser is someone who wants a certain thing out of life. Like, you enter life as a kid, you formulate your ideas, whatever. By the time you're a teenager, like older teenager, 18, 19, 20, even in your 20s, you're constantly developing a want. Like, you're constantly changing like your ideas on what you want out of life, right? And in my opinion, a loser is a person who has that want, but they don't do anything to like get it. Like, I had all these things that I wanted. I've always wanted to be fit. Like, growing up, I've always been just like a fucking pudgy kid. When I was a toddler, that's different. Like, obviously my parents were like, had complete control of what I was eating. So they would just feed me the good stuff because my parents care about their health. But after that point, when I started just being gluttonous, like around 13, I'm going out eating fast food. From what I can remember, from like 12, 13 on, I was always that fucking pudgy kid. Like, just that fat fucking kid. In my friend group, I was the fat funny guy. And I just hated that image. I really hated that image, because it's like, no one takes that guy seriously. You know, like he's there for a good time, but no one takes him seriously. Like if he says he's going to do something like, yeah, I'm going to get fit. They're like, all right, whatever. Like you don't got that drive. You don't have that discipline that it takes in order to get fit, because that's not something that's easy. I mean, granted, there are people in this world that are born with genetics that they could just eat fucking pizza every night and they have a six pack. I wish I was one of them. I'm not, clearly. But point is, I'd always wanted to be a fit person. That was like one of the things that really hit me. Like I realized since high school, since I cared about girls, since I cared about like self-image, all that shit, I'd always wanted to be a fit person, right? And I never even came remotely close to having like the fitness level that I wanted out of life, that I wanted to have. And I'm like, what the fuck? And it's like, you had all the tools available to you. Like my parents, they got me a gym membership. And yeah, there was a point where I was healthier. Like the healthiest I'd been at a certain point was like, I think when I was 19. That's the lowest body fat percentage I'd had in my adult, I would say like my adult form. Obviously, I'm discounting when I was a kid, right? So that was when I was the most fit. And even then, like I took so many things for granted. I didn't make use of the tools that were given to me. And it was like, what the fuck? I realized there was nothing I could be proud of. Like all the stuff that I said I was going to do and wanted to do, I didn't fucking do. That was a tough pill to swallow. Then I'm psychoanalyzing myself. I'm like, all right, why is it that I never got to do those things? How come I never achieved the things I wanted to achieve? Like, just why? Started asking myself those questions. And when I say quarter life crisis, I just want to preface, like, I know some people actually go through like real crises, whatever, like true quarter life crises. Like, I don't know what the fucking proper way to say that word is, but I know that there are people that really go through some tough shit, right? I'm not going to sit here and say it was like really difficult, that I was depressed and crying every. No. This is just like, I would say, a quarter life revelation, right? And I'd realized all of this stuff. And I started asking myself that question, the why is it that I never got to that point? And the biggest thing that I realized is that I just lacked discipline. And like another thing too, growing up in school with my parents, with any athletics, the limited athletics that I did, the sentiment around me or about me was that I was a lazy guy. Just like a lazy fuck. And I hate that word. Like lazy is a very annoying word to me, right? And am I going to say I'm not lazy? I do think I'm lazy, but there's a big difference, right? I think the reason that I was considered lazy was because I did not put in effort into things I'm convinced I have ADHD. I didn't put in effort into things that I didn't give a fuck about. So if I wasn't interested in it, or if it really genuinely did not, make me want to develop in this skill tree, or, whatever it is, if it didn't interest me, it was like out of my fucking mind. Like I never bothered, like why, like school. I don't really care about like English. Why the fuck am I going to put effort into English? I have not read a single summertime reading book from cover to cover ever in my life. Yet when I got back from those fucking, like summertime breaks and they give you those tests, I would just, like Spark Notes it, whatever, do what I needed to do in order to get the grade. And then that was it. Like I would do the bare minimum. So that's why I had this like perception of lazy. And then I realized like, okay, so am I a lazy guy? Blah, blah, blah. And yeah, I think I'm a lazy guy. But the biggest thing that stood out to me is that I lacked discipline. That's what it is. I realized I did not have discipline. I didn't have the ability to just do something because I knew it needed to be done. I didn't have that. I didn't have that will. I didn't have that determination. I was just like a fucking putz, so to speak. And I'm not saying I'm a different person now. I mean, I hope I will be, right? Only time will tell. But lately, if you judge me, if I judge myself on how I've been acting in the last, I would say 3 solid months, maybe even a little bit more than that, I would say I feel like I'm a different person, right? And the reason why is because when I had that revelation that I didn't have discipline, and I kind of like called myself out, and I realized I was on the fast track to being like by my definition, a loser, that's when I was like, this shit got to change. And I'm not the type of person that could do gradual changes. Like there's motherfuckers out there, and all the power to them, that if they want to lose weight and they know that they like every fucking day, they drink 12 Diet Cokes, they'll start off be like, okay, 7 days in a week, we'll start off by doing only 3 days of the week we could have a Coke, or only 3 days a week we could have like a dessert or whatever. I can't do that, right? I'm not that type of person. I realize now I'm the type of person that kind of has to do like a fucking 180 and just go full tilt into that direction. And if I could sustain that, I just keep going with that. Once I've established this new pattern of that direction in that on that end of the spectrum, once I'm comfortable in that uncomfortableness, right? And I've ingrained these new ideologies into my being, then I could kind of ease off the fucking gas and then find a balance point, you know? Because you can't just live on one end of the spectrum. There are people that like to just gradually get to the balance. I have to just overcorrect completely and then work my way back into the middle. That's kind of how I realized I function best. So when I had realized that, all this disciplinary shit, and, you know, and I was having this conversation with Miguel. This is kind of like the reason why I got the idea to do this podcast to begin with. Shout out Miguel. He's been on the podcast before, but he was asking me these questions, like, because he was gracious enough to compliment me and saying that he had noticed that I had lost a little bit of weight, and that he saw that I was like kind of a little bit, like I had a little bit more of like a grit to me, whatever it is. Like I was more intense about the gym, not meaning like, oh bro, you got to fucking lift, but like for myself, I held myself to a higher standard, and I was like harder on myself. He realized that, and we were talking, and then, you know, all this stuff came about, and it was like the biggest revelation, the biggest lesson that I took away from these past couple months is that I stopped caring about how I felt about doing something that was hard, right? Before, in my prime fat ass years, throughout my teenage years, if I knew I needed to go to the gym 4 days a week, minimum, whatever, 4 or 5 days a week in order to see results, if I woke up or if I got back and I was tired, I would be like, I'm not feeling too energized. I'm not feeling like I want to work out. Feelings. That's what I was concentrated on the most. Feelings. I don't feel like I want to do this thing that's inherently hard. The biggest change, or the thing that resulted in the most change in myself from like a mental, I get like the biggest mental shift that I made, was that I stopped asking myself, or I stopped caring how I felt about that thing. So now if I get home from work, right, or if it's been a long day and I'm tired and I know I got to work out, I don't say, I feel tired, I don't want to work out. I just say, okay, I'm tired. Still got to go. You still got to have the discipline. And it's hard. It was so hard. Like for the first month, dude, that shit was impossible. And really the thing that motivated, because motivation's a big word that's thrown out in like, you know, life, fitness, inspiration, all these inspiration influencers. And not that I'm trying to be one of those people, but like all these people that speak about fitness, motivation's always a thing that's brought into that. And there's a school of thought that I really like, and I guess I've kind of incorporated into like my lifestyle, is motivation is a shit fuel source. That shit is fast burning, right? It's like you'll be motivated for something only until it gets hard. You could be and you know, certain people have certain levels of grit, but reality is you could be motivated to, you know, I want 6-pack abs, whatever it is. I'm just throwing out an example. I want 6-pack abs. I'm motivated because I want to look good. That motivation is going to go away real quick once you start getting fucking hungry, or once you're realizing that you can't eat ice cream every night, or you have to do fucking steady state cardio for 30 minutes daily. Like once you realize all those things, that motivation flies out the fucking door, because all you're focused on now is the feeling of suck. And motivation, being motivated, that's a feeling that changes so fast. What's everlasting, what drives results, is discipline. That's the thing that I was like, fuck, like that's the light bulb that went off in my head. And when I kind of stopped asking myself, how do I feel about this, or not caring, that's when I, like that, again, I said before, like that first month was fucking hard. But then after just doing it on like just repetition, and I'm not joking, like I've talked about this before, I do jujitsu. That shit's really difficult, right? That's no joke. Not in terms of like, I'm not saying I'm like a fucking black belt, whatever. Obviously not. I suck ass at it. But I'm saying like the act of going into a place knowing you're going to get your ass kicked and just choked out by someone who's either smaller than you, bigger, whatever it is, it's not a fun thing to do. It's hard. It's not the most enjoyable thing, but it's good for you because it teaches you stuff, right? And I was realizing like, okay, I took a step in the right direction by doing jujitsu. The motivation to do it before was because I thought it was cool, but now that I'm doing it, motivation's gone. Now I just realize it's a good thing for me. I have to have discipline with this. I have to keep showing up, even though like it hurts sometimes. Like sometimes, like recently I got my fucking shoulder tweaked because the dude pulled on me. It popped a little bit. And now I'm like, And now I could be like, oh, I'm not saying to the point where like if I tear an ACL, I'm just going to Navy SEAL grind my way through the pain. No, I'm not this gritty ass guy that I might make myself out to be right now. All I'm saying is I realized I needed to have discipline. And I'm not joking. For that first month, I will say for the first time ever in my life, I went pretty balls to the wall hard. Like ever, for the first time. I will not pat myself on the back, but I will recognize the wins where I can truly say that I've earned them. So that for that first month, I started doing shit that I've never done before, like steady state cardio. I'm not a runner. Never been a cardio guy. Fucking hate it, right? More of like a weightlifter type of guy. Like I've worked out before and I enjoy the weightlifting part, but that's when I'm with friends. Then it's like I'm on my own, and the gym in this apartment building, it's a shitty little gym, but it gets the job done. And it's kind of depressing. Like it's gray, very limited equipment, small space, not AC, so it's hot. It's not an enjoyable place to like work out in. But I was like, fuck, you know what? Oh shit, if it looks like I'm like wearing like tighty whities right now, if you look, hopefully I'll crop this out. But I was like, you know what? Let me just embrace the suck here, okay? Let me just really let me recognize the fact that this is fucking difficult, but let me do it anyways, and then savor the fact that I won. Like it's a little victory every single day, right? And then in that first month, the shit that's changed between that first month and now that I'm like three and a half months into this, I guess, new lifestyle. This sounds so cringy, but the biggest thing is that I realized like day in and day out, when you do shit that's hard and you do it regardless of how you feel, you're winning like against yourself. This is not a new idea. I don't want to just, I've heard this from other podcasts and stuff like that. The phrase that comes to mind right now that really embodies this is, I think I heard it on the Joe Rogan Experience. It's like, and yes, I listen to that podcast. Think what you want about me. It was, you conquer your inner bitch, so to speak. Like that little voice that tells you right now, like, I'm not feeling too well. Like I'm feeling tired. Like don't go to the gym. When you do go to the gym or you do go to jiu-jitsu, or it doesn't even have to be fitness. Like I don't want to edit this podcast right now. I don't want to, do stuff that you have to do. When you do it, despite of how you feel, that is you winning against that little inner demon, that little inner bitch. That's like the biggest thing that I think has led to like the most change. The thing that's helped me make that mental shift the most. So that is to say, all right, all this stuff is tied together. What I was talking about in the beginning of the podcast. The reason you're going to see a lot more of me and just me is because I got sick and tired of just being like coming up with excuses as to why I couldn't upload. Oh, I don't have a guest this week. I can't fucking record an episode. Oh, it's so annoying to like set up the fucking microphones and plug in all this stuff, put this little shitty ass divider behind me, whatever. It's very frustrating to do that. It's too much effort. I was just like, all right, take all those feelings and just throw them out the fucking window. If I want to fucking grow this platform, if I want to have these interesting conversations with some really fascinating kick-ass people, this is the stuff that you have to do. Most of the time when you have a goal, you know what you have to do. It's just doing it that's the hard part. That's the thing that separates, people who get shit done and people who don't get shit done. It's just most people know the path. It's, do you have the willpower to walk it, I guess. This is sounding so cringy, but it all ties together. So that's why I'm saying you're going to see a lot more of me. Even if, I'm over here going off on wild tangents, not being the best solo podcast host, not being the best at doing solo episodes. If you have the patience and you stick it out with me, because this is what's going to be happening, I really fucking appreciate you. It's all part of the growing pains, because it's a necessity. And I'm tired of making excuses as to why I can't do this and why I can't do that, and I'm just going to fucking do it. That being said, a little bit more of like a weird not as lighthearted or funny episode as I'm used to, I guess, making, but a really good one to record nonetheless. Okay, so if you've made it to the end, I really fucking appreciate you. Seriously, like, I genuinely appreciate you. Please give me feedback, okay? I'm not saying be a hater, but give me, like, constructive feedback as to how I can improve the quality of this podcast. Maybe what you guys want to hear me talk about, whatever it is. I want to interact more with whoever watches these videos and shit. So, yeah, that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. Cue the outro music. And until next time, I'll see y'all on the next one. Deuces.